He'd already lived a lifetime, been to war, and had become a teacher. But first, on July 11th in 1937, he was born to Frank Colton and Kay Lind in Vernal, Utah. He had one older sister. This family of four moved to Salt Lake City when Darryl was 5. The war paved the way for his father to get a job in the defense industry. He took high school seriously, and upon graduating in 1955, he entered the University of Utah to get a degree in teaching. In 1960, a new college graduate, he was drafted to go to war.
But I was fortunate in a couple of things is because of my college background. They pulled me out and put me in some special training and sent me in a good place.
In 1961, he was shipped off to Heidelberg, Germany.
Heidelberg was a unique place. It was one of the few places that was not destroyed through the bombing of the Second World War. Heidelberg was an old university city, probably one of the oldest in Germany. So you had that university experience there. We loved to go to the Red Ox. The Red Ox was a tavern. Was made famous in the old musical, The Student Prince. We loved to go in there because you could hoop la la, sing, and kind of a crossroads for all of the tourists that would come through Heidelberg. They'd come in on the bus loads and go out on the bus loads every day. We were sent to Germany as a special attachment to the U.S. Army to the SINK. That's the Commander-in-Chief of the USAR Army. That is the main U.S. Army for all of Germany and Eastern Europe, mostly. We used to have the general come in to our office once a week, usually. We never knew about it. He would come in for briefings. One night, the SINK was in our office in his pajamas. On the other end of the line was Kennedy, and they were at that point where they needed to test access to East Germany because the Russians were kind of setting barricades. And it was decided that if they stopped us, we went anyway. So that was kind of critical toward a war breaking out. It's the last thing you want is another war.
He loved his time in Germany, and being in the military was good for him.
Well, I like things in order. I'm a fairly ordered person. My clothes were all hanging in the right direction, and my socks were all lined up in the drawer.
He stayed in Germany for 18 months before returning home at the age of 25 to take a teaching job in Ogden.
My dad was a teacher for 40 years, and on and off throughout those years, be brought to work as a small kid, even up to a teenager and all that, visit him in the classroom, and I would see his passion for teaching these kids, and you would see their, some teachers' kids would probably be half asleep, but with my dad, it's like they're just into it, if they were into the art. And that was just exciting. And so I'd like seeing, him teach in his element and all that. That's like the thing that I remember pretty memorably about my dad.
Darryl had been teaching for 5 years when he met the girl of his dreams, Pat, and their first date was definitely memorable.
I got very sick that night. I think that was too stressful for me.
And there was a sky room there. It was just a very exclusive restaurant. So we went up to the sky room and we were having our dinner, and all of a sudden, Darryl excused himself, didn't think anything of it, but he just didn't come back to the table. And I sat there and I sat there and I thought, well, was it my breath or do I have spinach on my teeth? Where did he go? And I sat there about 20-25 minutes. And it wasn't something that you could leave a table because the bill had to be paid. And I thought, what am I going to do? And so I have always, when I went out, I always had a little mad money, if you will, for a telephone call. We didn't have cell phones, smartphones. You just had, a public phone. And I thought, what am I going to do? I'm going to have to call my dad. He's going to have to come down, pay this bill. But all of a sudden, Darryl came back to the table. And I wanted to ask him, well, did you fall in? Did you pass out? Were you kidnapped? And you know, and I hadn't let the waiter take his food from the table. I thought, as long as I've got the food on the table, maybe I can just hold out. You see what I mean? And so he came back. He looked relieved, but like he had been through some stress. And so he finished his meal, and he couldn't get me out of there fast enough. So we drove home. He took me up to the door. He gave me a peck on the cheek. He was down those steps like he was in a relay race. And I thought, oh, well, that went well. I thought, probably won't be seeing him again. But I was just glad he came back to the table so he could pay, you know, the bill. You know what I mean? And the tip. And the very next morning, he showed up. I thought, you leave me at the table for a half hour, and the next morning, I wasn't even out of bed when he showed up. Well, what had happened, he'd forgotten his wallet. So he had gone to call his dad to bring him some money down to that Hotel Utah. Well, his dad wasn't there. They didn't answer. So he called my dad, told him the situation, and so all the time that I was waiting at the table, he was waiting in front of the Hotel Utah for my dad to come and hand him his, because he couldn't get his wallet, but my dad gave him some money so he could pay this bill. And so if I'd have called my dad, he wouldn't have been there anyway, because he was on his way down to the hotel. And I didn't even know this till the next day. And if anything, my dad just thought Darryl was the greatest. I don't know what it did, but my dad loved him till the day that he died.
6 weeks later, they were engaged.
We were at the
Paprika.
And we were sitting at the table.
And what did he say to you? What do you remember?
Golly, I can't remember that. What did you say?
I can't remember. I told her I did have a ring.
He had the ring that I'm wearing now. He just asked me to marry him. Well, I was thrilled. You know, I really was.
They were married on July 13th, 1967 in Salt Lake.
I gave her the longest kiss in the world.
It really was. It was held at Memory Grove, and it was a fun wedding.
Dancing. We did dancing.
We had a combo there. I mean, it was like a party. It was wonderful, and I felt so good about him.
2 years later, on November 28th, 1969, they had their first baby boy. They named him Kirk.
It's kind of scary, you know, because you think, how come they don't have college for new mothers? You know, because, you know, there's just a lot that goes into it. But, it was just a wonderful, wonderful experience. And we brought him back as a newborn to an apartment. And the apartment we brought him back is across Harrison.
Oh, he was my apple.
I'm very lucky that I've had parents that have supported me through super tough times, and my brothers through super tough times, and of course celebrated our accomplishments and all that. So through the bad times and the good times, they've been there. But also the fact that, like, my dad's more of the cerebral type, and my mom's more of the emotional type, and I think that having those two elements are really kind of sometimes enables me to be a little bit more balanced.
On April 30th, 1973, they added Kyle to the family.
If we came from a dysfunctional, non-loving family, I don't think we would have turned out to be the adults that we are.
Kip joined the family on March 14th, 1978, followed by the birth of Keegan on December 29th, 1980.
We were extremely lucky to have a stay-at-home mom. As I got older, having a stay-at-home mother, coming home from school and kindergarten and first grade and having her there to help with my homework and things. And I always felt like Mother was such a hard-working mom.
Kendall was their fifth and final son, born on January 9th, 1984.
Having my mom's just so sweet and caring and nurturing and compassionate and was always there. And same thing with my dad. He was always there, but just being able to learn from him, and they fill every aspect that I would need.
We had a minor basketball team, 5 boys.
As parents, they loved their boys. Their life revolved around guiding them through childhood.
I loved to have my kids go with me when I'd do home errands.
Going for drives was a big part, I think, of all of our upbringing.
And I always had a couple of kids in the back seat, always. They didn't require that we put everybody in a car seat and all of that in those years.
It was a more carefree life, but then tragedy struck, shaking them to their very core. Pat got a call from Primary Children's Medical Center saying Kip had been struck by a truck while crossing a busy street in Bountiful. He did not make it.
I was never the same. I've never been the same, and I've never thought the same. And it's not always a good thing, but your grief it just goes on. I mean, there's just not very many minutes that I don't think about that kid, you know, and obviously.
I never got over the loss of my middle child, so that stands out, obviously. Something I've learned to live with, but it still hurts.
Even with all of the trials and the tribulations, just try to get on with life. I mean, it is hard. It is hard. But to just, you know, persevere. And when he was gone, part of my heart was gone.
To help ease their grief, Darryl designed and built a home in Ogden, moving his family to a new place where they could begin to rebuild emotionally as a family.
How he designed this house. And you know, that takes a lot. In fact, I think, didn't one of the builders said that architects don't have as good a specs as that you had? Is
Well,
that correct?
when I turned my blueprints in for approval at the city, they were pretty immaculate, but I spent hours upon hours. I've never learned good CAD skills on the computer because I'm from the old school. I'd rather pick up a pen, a pencil, and draw a line.
In their new home, they wanted to feel love.
And they always supported each other. And probably when Kip died, in most families would probably be ripped apart, and they kept it together. They've always kept us together.
There was still like a real comfort in the home because, you know, my parents were, you know, both loved each other, loved their kids, but tried to have a harmonious household and raise their kids. And
Giving everything that has happened to this family with the tragic loss of our brother Kip, and seeing them work through that and stay together and continue to love each other and give us all the love and attention that we deserved.
Having the solid backbone as solid parents that we were lucky to have, that were very smart, very wise. And that, you know, you might have drama or negativity within a family, but, you know, that's the stuff that really brings you together, because if you fight through something, and you become stronger because of it. So.